autonomous, activate, elevate.
One of the biggest mistakes marketers and content creators make is producing a piece of content, publishing it, posting it a few times on their social channels or email, and then letting it die within the resource center. Today, I want to show you how Content Remix from HubSpot can turn a single webinar asset into over 15 assets that you can use to promote and get a lot more value out of the content that you're producing. So I'll show you a few things that I learned along the way in building this out so that you know all the tricks so you don't have to spend lots of time trying to figure this out yourself. So first off, when you come into Content Remix, you have to give it a piece of source content. So for me, I'm taking a webinar and I'm going to turn this into 17 different assets. So when you do is in this very first part, you're going to go in and add that source material. The source material can be video, it can be a PDF, it can be a lot of different things. You can also combine source materials. So let's say you want to take a webinar and a PDF and a blog post and you want to put it all together to then create and repurpose additional assets. You can do it that way too. So what I did is I'm taking our monthly Smart Take webinar, which we do every single month and share all the latest HubSpot product updates. I took the PDF of the slides and I took the video from the webinar, and now I'm going to repurpose this into 17 different assets. So once you get those inside there, you click the plus button and you can decide what types of assets do you want to reproduce and create new types of assets around. What I've found to work best is the Content Remix works best to produce blog content. It does pretty well in producing podcast content, so it can take the script from your original webinar and then it can produce its own podcast script for that and use AI to help actually lay out that record the actual podcast for you, and then you can take that file and put it whatever channel you'd like. HubSpot also does pretty well in reproducing the content asset into video clips. Inside of these video clips, these are just like 30 to 60 second clips. You can then produce various kinds, and I'll walk you through the prompts for those. Next, it does pretty well in creating email, and you'll see that I had it create 5 different emails. So why would I do 5 different emails? I'll get into the prompts in a sec, but essentially what this does is when you produce a piece of content, what AI really allows us to do is get very specialized and very targeted with the messaging. And so what we did is we're creating different emails towards specific verticals or to different customer segments. And so as you create these, you can then adjust the prompt specifically, and then you'll be able to see how the copy changes based on that. So let's go through this, how this kind of works once you start to put all the assets inside of here. So once you add specific assets in here, you're going to have to give HubSpot more information if you really want this to be a high quality asset. If you don't give it custom information, such as like a prompt, then you're not going to get good output. So you can see what happens when you add an asset inside here, any kind of asset, and you click next. It then asks you for custom instructions. It's going to ask you for a little bit more information as well, like what's the length of this asset, or where do you want this thing published or produced? Do you want to include images, etc.? And you need to give it that kind of information. And what I've been leveraging is Claude or Gemini to go and help me write these instructions so I can give it a lot of detail. And if you've been using AI, the more instruction, the more context you can give it, typically the better output that you're going to get from the finished product. And so once I've added these specific assets in here, you can see what I did is I came in here and gave it a specific prompt that is going to allow us to go in and publish this kind of content, and it's going to give enough context to produce that asset. So I had, from the source material, I published a blog post, a podcast, and then some video clips in those emails. The blog post, I've given it instructions. On the podcast, I've given it instructions. Inside of each one of these assets, you can see where it says save and edit an app. It'll then take you to another screen where you go in and you can make tweaks to it. You can adjust the asset accordingly. Within the video clip section, HubSpot recommends specific videos for you based on the text and what you've provided within the prompt. And then you can take each one of these, save and edit, and go in and adjust them and fine tune them as you want. From here, what's really cool about Content Remix is you can then, from these pieces of repurposed content, you can then repurpose those pieces of content. So with the blog post that I had written based on the webinar, I had it then generate 4 more pieces that I'm going to use on social. So the first one I'm using is a social post that you could, if I wanted to create, one of those long form LinkedIn blog posts. That's what I had that's what I had it write this for. Next, I had it write some social posts. So based on that blog post, I'd like the social post broken out as well, so it could promote that blog post that I wrote. Next, you got to have a tweet thread in here. So inside here, I had it write some social content that we're going to post to Twitter, and within each tweet, it's going to talk about one of the updates that came out from the previous month. So that makes it so it writes all my tweets right in there, and then I could save that right in the social app and then go kind of break that out into several tweets. And then on LinkedIn, you can do polls. Why not do a poll? So here's a poll question that it helped me produce. So then from here, I don't think we can create polls inside of HubSpot. I might be wrong, but in any case, it produces a poll. So I could then go produce a poll, and then for people this poll ties back to the webinar that I just did. And you can see inside of here, you can customize this however you like, and you can have it published to whatever network that you like. So a couple other things for you to know. There are other asset types that you can create. When I click in here, you can see I can also have it produce a web page or a landing page. So this could be pretty useful if, let's say, you're trying to promote an event or a webinar or some sort of ABM style landing page. You could have it create web pages based off of content. You can also have it create images or ads. The one thing that I found is that there's not a lot of fine tuning that you can do with some of the visuals within here. It gives you some basics around the types of images that you can use, whether those are realistic or they're drawings or something like that. I haven't got a lot of luck with some of the images inside here. When we look inside the email, some of the emails themselves, we can see some of the images like they just, they're definitely, they look like AI, and there's not really an easy way that I could go in and change the copy within an image like you could on a Canva or something like that. So I've just not tried to create a lot of image heavy repurposed content because I don't find like I get the best output from that. But that's really everything that's inside of here. The last thing I will say is within the emails that I created, each of these are really industry targeted. So I created one that's related to manufacturing, one for healthcare. So within each one of those prompts, then you can go create a really customized email for that. And then once you're about ready to take all of these live, you could then go push all these assets into the respective tool, edit them, and then send them out. The last thing I will say is that you have some sort of recurring campaign that you run. For us, we run our webinars every single month. If you're using this Content Remix tool, you can go ahead and save this as a template. So going forward, you will always be able to then come back in and then leverage this out of every single month. And I'm sure you're going to want to continue tweaking this as you see certain types of assets work better than others. So that's how you can turn one webinar into 17 different assets. I hope you got a lot out of this. Feel free to drop your questions in the comments below, and I hope to see you soon.